Yudalit Amud Beis will begin Yudalit Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the bottom, 2 dots. Elohein bein aprakim. Amar Ravo Amar Rav Yochanan halacha ki Rav Yehuda the Amar bein Elokeichem la'emes v'yatziv lo yafsik. We learned in the Mishnah that bein aprakim, between the parshias, between the paragraphs, one could be mafsik, can interrupt, depending on the circumstances. It's minei kavod, minei yira. Rav Yehuda said that between Hashem Elokeichem emes, between emes and yatziv, you should not be mafsik, should not interrupt. So that's the halacha. Amar Rav Yochanan, my time of the Rav Yehuda, what's the reason why can we not be mafsik? Dirshu, because the pasuk says, the Navi says, Yirmiyah says, Va'ashem Elokim emes. So Yirmiyahu and Navi connected the two together, therefore we are not mafsik between the two. It's one uninterrupted expression. Does he repeat emes? And when if he pauses for whatever reason, if he waits for a chazan, now when he continues V'yatziv, does he start emes? Is he chayzer v'aymer emes, or he just says v'yatziv? Amar Rav Yochanan chayzer v'aymer emes. He does. Rabba Amar eino chayzer v'aymer emes. Rabba says he does not. Ahu denachis kamei de Rabba. There was a shliach tzibur. He came before Rabba Shalmei Rabba de Amar emes trei simnei. He repeated the emes twice. Amar Rabba kol emes tafsulahai. He was caught up with emes, and he now just continues saying emes. He got caught up in a stream of emes, and he said emes. Meaning Rabbi Lashis also says that you do not repeat emes. Now, as the points can point out, the shliach tzibur, when he's now saying it for the tzibur, he does say Hashem Elokeichem emes. But that's not where this occurred. This occurred where he was saying it for himself, where he's saying his own Kriyashma and the own third parsha of Kriyashma, and he said emes twice. Amar Rav Yosef Kama Mal Yahishmai Tzedek Yosef Rav Shmuel Bar Yura Amar Ami Bar Rava. He said, how beautiful is this memra that they said in Eretz Yisrael, that they say in Arvis, they say Dabral B'nai Yisrael V'amarta Lehem. Now, the third parsha of Kriyashma is a parsha of tzitzis, and at nighttime is not the mitzvah of tzitzis, not night. So in Eretz Yisrael, what they did was they started v'amarta lehem, and then they skipped till the end. So they skipped the entire portion dealing with tzitzis. They skipped to the end, and they said Ani Hashem Elokeichem emes, and they skipped to the end, and they said emes. Why is that so great? He says you don't have to start the third parasha. It is not noig at night, but if you begin, you must complete it. And over here they began the parasha and they skipped it. Maybe you'll say, well, that's not considered. Martlam is not considered beginning. It's not considered commencing. It just said, that is not considered a haskalah, but that is considered a haskalah. Amar Papa, he answers, they hold that it's not considered haskalah, it's not considered commencing until they actually say v'asalam tzitzis. And therefore, they held that it's not considered beginning the parasha, and therefore you can skip to the end. Amar Abaya, his Abaya says, therefore in Bava we start because they start in Eretz Yisrael, they began the parasha. But but once we start, we say the entire parasha. So therefore, we consider this to be haskalah. We start because they start. Now in Eretz Yisrael, they didn't consider it haskalah; they skipped to the end. But we start, they started, but we do consider it haskalah, and therefore we recite the entire parasha. In the Meforshim are bothered by, in any event, how can you skip? We know you're not allowed to skip. The Gemara Megillah speaks it out clear. We're not allowed to skip from portions of a parsha. We're not allowed to break up a pasuk. Where Moshe Rabbeinu did not break up the pasuk, we don't break up the pasuk. So how could it be that in Eretz Yisrael they said Vamarta Aleihem, and then they skipped to Ani Hashem Elokeichem Emes? How could they skip? So the Ritva speaks out. He says because there is an identical pasuk in Parshas Achrei. There's an identical pasuk that says Vamarta Aleim Ani Hashem Elokeichem. So in fact, it is a pasuk somewhere else, but it is a pasuk. So therefore, it's not considered breaking up a pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu did not say, did not express. Back to the Gemara about Rav Amar Ani Hashem Elokeichem Sorach Lo Yomer Emes. If he says Ani Hashem Elokeichem, he has to say Emes. Lo Yomer Ani Hashem Elokeichem Eino Sorach Lo Yomer Emes. Then if he doesn't say Ani Hashem Elokeichem, he doesn't have to say Emes. Then he doesn't have to say the parsha. He doesn't have to say Emes V'Amuna, that whole section of the bracha after Krishma. Frag the Gemara, what do you mean? How can he omit that? How can he omit that whole section of Emes V'Amuna? How can he omit that? V'Boilat Kuri Yitzias Mitzrayim. Even though there's no mitzvah of tzitzis at night, but there's a mitzvah of, like we learned previously, to be master Yitzias Mitzrayim in the night as well. So how can he omit that and omit the Zechira of Yitzias Mitzrayim? The more answer is he does not omit it, but he says a different nusach. The Amar Hachi Moidim Anachnu L'Cho Hashem Elokeinu She'Soisanu Me'Eretz Mitzrayim Uftisanu Mibeis Havadim V'Asis Halanu Nisim Gvuras Halayam V'Sharnu Lach. And as Rashi points out, and then he continues with Micha Moicha and Gol Yisrael and Hashkivenu. And he continues with the brachas after Krishma, meaning it's not that he omits his time. He says a different nusach. If he doesn't say Ani Hashem Elokeichem Emes, then he doesn't say the nusach of Muna. He says this nusach, but he does mention Yetzias Mitzrayim because he's mechuyev to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim at night as well. Amar Rishu ben Karcha, Laman Kama Parsha Shema V'Chulei. So in the Mishnah, Rishu ben Karcha gave the reasons for the order of Shema in the first parsha, Vayam Shema the second parsha, and Vayam the third parsha. The Brisa now is going to give some different reasons. Tanya Rishu ben Yochai Bedin Hu Sheyakdim Shema Vayam Shema. The reason why Shema comes first, it's a good reason, a valid reason. Shazel Lilmud V'Zel Alami, because Shema is Lilma, is to learn, and Vayam Shema is to teach. And as Rashi points out, you can't teach if you don't learn first. So therefore, it's prerequisite in teaching to learn first. Therefore, Shema, which is learning, comes first before the second parasha of V'Limadatem, of teaching. Vayam Shemo Levayomer. Why does Vayam Shemo come before Vayomer? Shazel Lilmod V'Zel Asais. Because you have to learn before you perform, and the second parasha is to learn, and is the third parasha, or the second parasha, the girsa, another girsa on the side is Lamed, is to teach, and then is Lasais, to perform. The third parasha is Lasisa, is performing the mitzvah. What do you mean? You're telling me that the first parasha is only to learn, not to teach, and not to perform the mitzvahs? What do you mean? It doesn't have all of these components. So Vishinantam is teaching your children, so that's teaching. It says and that's performing the mitzvah of tefillin. So, and it has the mitzvahs for performing the mitzvahs, tefillin, mezuzahs, teaching. It has everything in it. So why are you telling me that the first parsha is only to learn? Vesu v'yoim shemo lelamed hu de isbei. It's only to teach. V'laso is lesbei, and it doesn't have performing the mitzvahs. It's not included in their performing the mitzvahs. V'aksiv k'shadum ksavta. Elo halchikama. Bedin hushatik nashitaktim shema l'vayam shemoa. No, there's a valid reason why Shema comes first. Now we're amending our understanding of the Brisa. Because Shema comes first, Shezeh lilmod ulalamed v'lasas. Because the first parsha Shema has all of the components. V'yayim shemoa l'vayayimer. Shezeh yeshba lilalamed v'lasas has two of the components. Vayayimer ein bo l'lasas bilvad. The third parsha only has the performance of the mitzvah, not learning and teaching, so that's why we have that order. Why do we need these additional reasons? Why isn't it sufficient, the reasons of Rav Shua ben Korcha that we learned in the Mishnah? More answers. Rav Shua ben Korcha's reason, all mitzvahs. First, the reason that we learned in the Mishnah of Shua ben Korcha, first Shemekabel Omach Shemayim, which is Shema, and then the second parasha, which is Kabbalah's mitzvahs. And additionally, there are these reasons as well. Rav washed his hands, Vikora Krishma, and he recited Krishma, and then V'anach Tefillin, and then he put on Tefillin, and Vitzali, and then he davened. So he had the order, Krishma was before putting on Tefillin, and that's the order of the way he performed the mitzvahs. So fragt the Gemara, how could he do it in that order? We learned in the Brisa, if a person is digging a kever in a cave, he's digging the recess for the kever for the mace, so he's oisik in the mitzvah of kvura. If he's oisik in the mitzvah of kvura, he's potter from other mitzvahs. Potter mikrishma uminat tefillah. Then he's potter from these mitzvahs. When we call mitzvahs hamuras b'Torah, and from all mitzvahs hamuras b'Torah. So he's oisik b'mitzvah, he's potter min a mitzvah, he's potter krishma tefillah, all mitzvahs hamuras b'Torah. Practices. Why not just say mikol mitzvahs hamuras b'Torah, krishma tefillah? These are mitzvahs hamuras b'Torah. Why identify them separately? Why isn't it sufficient to just say mikol mitzvahs hamuras b'Torah? Taisus answers is telling you even these mitzvahs which have a limited time, Krishma has to be said within a certain period of time. Ashol shoyis. Therefore, you might think, well, these mitzvahs, since it's a shoy, whereas maybe he would be mechoyev. No, it's telling me that he's potter and all of the mitzvahs, including Krishma, tefillah, and tefillah. So I'll call upon him. The Brisa says he's oisik b'mitzvah, then he's potter mikol mitzvahs or retire. He gives man Krishma. If this man Krishma comes, Oila v'noitel yodav, he washes a menich tefillin v'kayar Krishma v'spala, and he puts on tefillin and he says Krishma v'spala. So the order that it brings down is that it's first tefillin, then Krishma and tefillin, and Rav did the order of Krishma and tefillin afterwards. Now, before we come to that, to answer that question, we have an inherent contradiction in the Brisa, which the Gemara is going to deal with right now. The beginning of the Brisa says, if he's oisik in the mitzvah kvura, he's potter mikol mitzvahs hamuras b'Torah. And then it says, he is man Krishma, then he washes and he now does these mitzvahs, tefillin, Krishma, and tefillah. So, the Gemara Gufa Kasha, Reisha Amar Potter. The Reisha says he's Potter from these mitzvahs, the Sefer Chayev, and the Sefer says he's Chayev. The Gemara says, Haloi Kash, Sefer B'Trei Reisha B'Chad. The Sefer is talking about two people, and the Reisha is B'Chad. In the Reisha, when he's alone, so he's oisik in the mitzvah, so he's Potter. The Reisha said, now, but if there's two people digging, now they're taking turns. So they're taking shifts. So when one person is digging, the other person now is not oisik in the mitzvah. So if they're taking shifts, so one is digging, one is oisik in the mitzvah kfur. Now the second one, when it's not his turn to dig, now he's chayav in the mitzvahs. But Mikol Mokim Kashel Rav. But in any event, why isn't this difficult for Rav? Because you see that the order is first Tefillin, then Krishma, and Rav, his order was Krishma, then Tefillin. Perhaps the Gemara, Rav Kirav Yeshua ben Korach Asvirle. Rav holds like Rav Shimon Korach in our Mishnah that says the reason why Shema goes first is because Ol Malchus Shamayim, the Amar Ol Malchus Shamayim Tchilo v'Achar Kach Ol Mitzvahs. So he held like Rav Shimon ben Korach that the first thing to do is the first performance is a mitzvah Ol Malchus Shamayim. So therefore Krishma comes before Tefillin. Frag the Gemara, Ema Dam Rav Yeshua ben Korach lahakdim kriya lekriya. That's only Rav Shimon Korach says that there's a priority that kriya to kriya, the reciting of the parsha of Al Malchus Shamayim takes precedence for the recital of the parsha of mitzvahs. But that's kriya lekriya. When it's both kriya, he's reciting both parshas. But kriya la'asiyah mishametle, who says that he would hold by reciting Krishma comes before the performance, before the asiyah of the tefillin? Who said? And secondly, misav like Rav Yeshua ben Korach. In any event, does he hold like Rav Yeshua ben Korach? V'amar Rav Chia Barashi Ziminskian. I was frequently havakim and kamed the Rav. I was by Rav, and I observed umakdim the mashe yada. He got up early, he washed his hands, umavarech umasalan pirkin, and he benched Birchas HaTorah. He said the Baruch of Birchas HaTorah, and he taught us this year. Umanach tefillin, and then he put on tefillin. V'hadakari Krishma, and then Krishma. So you see, Rav himself, the order that he performed it was tefillin and then Krishma, and that's the order. Well, maybe he'll tell me that the reason that he did it in that order is because it was too early for Krishma. Maybe he'll tell me really Krishma comes first and then tefillin. The reason those cases that he did tefillin first because it was too early for Krishma, and that's why he put on tefillin first. Frank Marian Kane, Maisa Dasa, the Rav Chia Barashi. So if that's the case, well, what is he telling us? What is he coming to teach us with saying, I observed Rav did it in that order? If really that's not the correct order, and it's only because it was too early to say Krishma, what is he telling us now? What is his edus? What does he want to teach us with this? So that can't be what it's for. So Gemara says, no, perhaps it is. And it's not telling us anything about the order of tefillin and Krishma. Perhaps what he really is coming to teach us with this is not the order of Krishma and tefillin, because really the order perhaps should be first Krishma and then tefillin. What is he coming to teach us? Perhaps what he's coming to teach us is not a halacha in the order of Krishma and tefillin, but rather he's coming to teach us a halacha in Birchas HaTorah. To teach us that even from Mishnah you have to make a Birchas HaTorah. Lafuke the mandamar that we learned previously, that it's only for Mikra. He's teaching us that for Mishnah as well, he was mevorach Birchas HaTorah. But perhaps he's not telling me any chiddush legabe the order of Krishma and tefillin. And perhaps Rav held that the order really should be that it's first Krishma and then tefillin. But in any event, it's a kasha according to Rav, because the Brisa says that the order is first tefillin and then Krishma. More answers. Shluchahu the obvious. And a chanami. The order is, as the Brisa says, and as we know la halacha, that the order is first tefillin and then Krishma. Why did Rav do it in the other order, in the reverse order? It's because the shaliach was late in bringing the tefillin, and he was worried that the Zman Krishma would pass. So in that case, he said Krishma first. That's why he said Krishma first, and then put on tefillin. It was in that particular case because the shaliach was late in bringing the tefillin. But in a chanami, really what should be done is the proper way is tefillin and then Krishma. And as we see from the Brisa, and as we can now say from the Sadus of Rav Chia Barashi, In that particular case, he did it in that order because the shaliach was late and he had no choice. He was afraid that he would miss the Zman Krishma. Omer Ula Kol Krishma B'Leit Tefillin. So as we just said, that the proper way to perform the mitzvah is first tefillin and then to have to recite Krishma. So Ula says Kol Krishma B'Leit Tefillin. If he says Krishma without putting on tefillin, Ilu Meir Eidu Sheker B'Atzma. He's testifying a false testimony on himself. He's reciting the parasha, and the parashas say that we're mechuyev, that we put on tefillin. And here he's reciting the parasha and he's not wearing tefillin. So he's like testifying falsely on himself. He says if he does it that way, it's like he's been makriv a korban oila without bringing a mincha. The korban oila has to have a mincha with it. And if he does it this way, it's an incomplete mitzvah. He's being makriv the korban oila, so to speak, but without bringing the mincha. Here also he's saying Krishma without tefillin. So, according to Ula, as the Meforshim speak out, it's not that it's incomplete, but it's an Eidu Sheker B'Atzma. But here, Rav Yochanan is taking it a step further. He's saying it's an incomplete mitzvah. Ula, so he says it's Kilo Hikriv Oila Beloy Mincha, V'Zevach Beloy Nesachim, and other korbanos without bringing the Nesachim, the Nesachim that accompany the other korbanos, the wine that's poured on the Mizbeach. It's like he brought an Oila without a Mincha, and a Zevach without Nesachim. Taisus points out that he could have said that it's simply that it's an Oila without a Mincha and without Nesachim, because an Oila has both. Well, he splits it up that way because the pasuk, the lashon of Kra, it's oila, that it's oila mincha zevach and nesachim. It's just to use the expression, the same expression that the pasuk has, but in the Hanami, really, it's like an oila without mincha and nesachim, meaning it's considered an incomplete mitzvah krishma if he recites it without wearing tefillin.